What up? Good evening. Today is July the 14th, 2021, and I am your host, Reverend Deontay Curl, right here on Turn Up the Volume Podcast. I'm excited to be here with you guys yet again today with another edition, another topic, another conversation. And like I always say each and every week, I am having the time of my life. And I have a very special guest with me today. She is very special to me, even though I've only known her for a short amount of time. But it feels like I've known her for forever. She is so important to it. She has a platform, she has a radio show, and she has allowed me to grace her show several times. I done lost count after two. But nonetheless, none other than Reverend Sue Harris Green. I'm going to read a little bit about her. Reverend Sue Harris Green is the host of Sunday Evenings with Reverend Sue. She was born on a family farm in South Georgia. Later, her family moved to South Florida. Experience from fields to factories. She is a graduate of Wesley Theological Seminary, where she earned her Master's of Divinity degree. She is married to Michael Green, who was also the producer of her show. I introduce to some and present to others none other than the Reverend Sue Harris Green. How are you, Reverend?
I am fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to have you on. I'm glad to have you on because, like I tell anybody, especially people who have um, given me opportunities on their platforms, I'm just blessed to be able to say I have a platform to have you on because you have invited me not just one time, but several times. And I do not take it for granted. I enjoy it each and every time. It's a no brainer every time you call me to come on your radio show. And we just have fun. And I wanted my listening audience to experience just a little bit of what we do when we on your show because it's almost like always a intergenerational conversation. I wanted to bring that here because you and I not only do we talk on your radio show, but we talk offline about various topics and
Mhm.
subjects and this particular subject I wanted to talk about to have an intergenerational conversation about the civil rights movement now and then, or then and now rather. And what I mean by that is, when I think of the civil rights movement or the civil rights era, I think of the 1950s and 60s. We think about people like
Mhm.
Medgar Evers, Martin Luther King, and Andrew Young, Andy Young, John Lewis. And then when I think about the plight, like we have always, for the longest time as African Americans, we have always had some kind of plight in this country where we are fighting systemic racism, prejudice and oppression in various different ways. But I feel like it looks different. I feel like the civil rights movement looks different, and of course, my mother has always told me to respect my elders. So you, compared to my age, you're my elder, and I respect you as such. And you have knowledge and experience of the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s, and you also have um, experience of the civil rights movement in terms of what it looks like today, if it still exists in that same way, in that same manner.
Mhm.
And so, I guess my first question to you is: does the civil rights era still exist? Because like I said, when I think of the civil rights era, I think of certain individuals that I can pinpoint it to, or that are synonymous, at least in my mind. But does it still exist, at least in the same way today?
You know what? And thank you for so much having me on your podcast. Is I admire you and all the work that you're doing here in the Washington D.C. area as well as now throughout the country and
Oh,
internationally. You're fantastic, and I thank God for you.
I'm
But
following your footsteps.
oh my goodness, oh my goodness. So is it still here? Does it still exist? Well, the statement is that it never ended.
Mm.
Never ended from the people you talked about, you named Martin Luther King and others. We can go down the list of George Floyd. We can go down the list of all our brothers and sisters who have actually lost their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So it hasn't ended. We look at the 50s and the 60s where churches were involved tremendously. Schools were involved, the high schools were involved, colleges were involved. I think now, if you really look at the churches and see what, In other words, churches were heavily involved.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I think more is more like interest driven versus social media driven,
Yeah.
more so than I'm saying this more than churches. People, Martin Luther King had his, when they decided that they were going to go on the boycott, and then they decided that yes, you're going to be the leader. It happened at a church, and he did his
Right.
fantastic persuasion type speech, and he wrote it that night, and he said it was one of the most difficult speech that he ever written, and he had to present it to the crowd at the church. And you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about people who worked in houses, people who did construction work, people who worked on the farm, all the different lawyers and doctors. You had so many Afro American meeting in a church so that they could plan to see what, number one, if they're going to do it, and then after that they start planning. But meeting took place in the church.
Right.
Now I think we do it more with social media, and thank God for social media because we're here today.
Yeah.
But it has, I don't think it ended. It's different maybe, but not ended. And another thing is that I talk to young people, and when I hear what they're saying, some people don't have a place to live after they finish college. Some people don't have a
Mm.
job to go to after they finish college, let alone if they did not go. So the needs that we have, the social needs that we have, are still here today, but maybe in a little fancier way. And we have to be very careful not to look at it like that, because what's in the box was the same in the box back in the 1950s and 60s.
Yeah. 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 And so it's funny you say that because anybody who knows me knows I love MLK. I love not how they glorify and place him as an icon, but I love him as who in terms of who he was as a human being because I
Mm-hmm.
saw him as a human being. You know, when I became interested in learning about his life, the movement, and all that kind of thing. And you mentioned the Montgomery bus boycott. You know, of course, he was a part of the MIA, the Montgomery Improvement
Mm-hmm.
Association. You know, back in 1955, 54, 55, when he was in Montgomery, and he was very young. You know, and so he almost immediately went from becoming just this pastor who went from Atlanta to Montgomery, and now he was spearheading this organization, and now he was the person of contact to where is when you want something done, when you need a march, you go to MLK, you go to or ML, what they called him back then,
Mm-hmm.
and and so the civil rights movement, when you talk about that time period back in the 50s and 60s,
Mm-hmm.
you could identify who the leader or the leaders were. It was very few that you can pinpoint and identify. Versus today, you see numerous leaders, numerous organizations. You
Mm-hmm.
can link yourself to any organization to begin to get work done or what have you. And so, is that a good thing? That I guess if you could say we've evolved in that way to where we have numerous leaders. Should we have one leader? Because some people when they in 2021 they say, okay, well I want to be involved, I want to do something, but who do I talk to? I think because a lot of my peers they don't know who to talk to, they don't know who to go to. But then there's many different organizations. So is it a good thing that we have too many organizations? Versus when you look at the civil rights movements of the 50s and 60s, like is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Uh, no, no more is better. I mean, in other words, I think more is better because we get to the point where we started depending on one person and that
Mm-hmm.
one person voice, that one person traveling all over the country, that one person is doing the major meetings, and psychologically, we, I think as Black people, it could have been more of a I wouldn't say more of a challenge than a strength. However, when you are a leader, you have other people within your group of leaders in various situations. You can call in Wisconsin, there are leaders. You have leaders in Atlanta. You so basically, I think it's great to have people involved, and we call them leaders. They are leaders.
Mm-hmm.
We have church leaders. We have in community leaders. So I don't think we wait on a one particular person or name to say, oh, that person is going to be speaking to us tonight. We have several people speaking to us. We have several professors. We have teachers in schools. So that's great. That's fantastic.
You know, it's interesting you say that because I was watching a documentary about a week ago, and um, it was on MLK. I was watching it with my wife, and I think Diane Nash. I don't know if you're familiar with her, Diane Nash. She was a part of SCLC, and she was talking about Martin Luther King, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it was her that said it. But she said the dangers. I'm paraphrasing what she said. The dangers of that particular time was everything kind of fell on Martin's back to the point to where it kind of set him up to be killed because it looked as if he had all the power. He could
Mm-hmm.
move. He was the only one, quote unquote, that could move people in droves and was very
Mm-hmm.
problematic in a good way for us with his speech, with his rhetoric, and all that kind of thing. And so when I think about that comment, and I think about today where we have different organizations and different leaders of these different organizations, it's like you can't really just pinpoint one because you got so many that can be a threat to white supremacy. And I feel like it's also a good thing as well that even though, yes, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, but they were easy targets because of the work they did and because we put so much on their backs, it made them easy targets. Versus, it doesn't take an MLK to just have to go here or there. Like we have people in our own respective states and cities that can get the job done, and that can be a force to be reckoned with. And so I think that's very interesting, you know. And so what I say to my peers that are my age, the millennials and the Gen Xers
Mm-hmm.
and all that kind of thing, find you a local organization that you know of, that you may have heard of, that's in your community, and
Mm-hmm.
link up with them because there's a lot that needs to be done in your community where you reside that could use your assistance, that could use your help. And so I guess for me it's like don't look for the MLKs because I don't think we're going to see another MLK. I don't know if you agree with that, but I don't think
Well, mhm,
I don't.
I think that but the way I look at it is that we have elected officials.
Yeah.
Uh, During the time when MLK, we could count them probably on our hands. But we have elected officials, and having elected officials, like say like the Texas Democrats now in Washington D.C.
Yeah.
They're here in Washington D.C. because all the things that are going on in Texas.
Yeah.
So that's more than one leader, and that's critical. So civil rights has not ended, but as far as one leader, I think now we have so many leaders and taking on the responsibility because I'm going to say this. Well, we're live, aren't we?
Yeah,
Okay.
we are.
Anyway,
This is my show.
you
You
know
can say
what?
what you
And
want to
I'm
say.
going to say this from a Afro American community way back is that some people became complacent because they had the one leader. But
Yes.
now you don't have that one leader. You have a representative in your community. You have a representative from your for your state. So now it's your responsibility to communicate to the Congress person or the senator. It's our responsibility to get up and not depend on one person to manage all the things that we need to do as African Americans.
So complacent. So you're saying back then a great deal of people were complacent. Okay, so MLK is here now, or Medgar Evers is here now, Malcolm X is here now. So we're complacent. Let them do all the work. Let us tell them what we need done, and then they're going to put the speeches together, put the marches, or put the what have yous together. And are you saying complacent in that way?
I'm basically saying complacent in that way. Not everybody, because we managed to do a lot during the civil rights movement. But we know that that one person. How can we got to get in touch with Martin Luther King? We got to get in touch with the other leaders. Now we start thinking about what is the Supreme Court is going to do? Who's in the Supreme Court? What is my senator is going to do? What is my congressperson is going to do? This what we force ourselves to be proactive and make and get things done. I am not waiting for something to happen and now everybody looking at that one person.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's very important. You need people in different arenas who can do different things. Like, okay, we need somebody that has the skill set to sit in Congress and to lobby and to fight for whatever it is that we need to fight for, right? And so, I think that when we look at the civil rights movement today in 2021, we have to push our people to say, hey, don't be afraid to run for Congress or to run for the mayor or to do different things because we need you. We need your expertise, right? And I've heard Dr. Greg Carr. He was actually the first person I heard to say this of Howard University. He said, individuals don't beat institutions, but groups of people do. And so it doesn't take just one person. It takes a community. It takes a brotherhood, a sisterhood. It takes a village to break down systemic
Mm-hmm.
racism, to break down oppression. And then now we're talking about this whole critical race theory thing, right? that
Mm-hmm.
that everybody is up in arms about. We have to be able to come together and to say everybody plays a part, right? We are one body. It's not just a biblical thing. We're one body, but we're many members and many parts to this body called civil rights and to this
Mm-hmm.
body called the
Mm-hmm.
family and the group of African Americans. And so what that means is I can't do what Reverend Sue does, right? Or I can't do what a Trey Daniel who's in Georgia does. I can't do
Mm-hmm.
what a James Brooks does, and he's in the educational field trying to combat different things or what have you. Like we all have a role, and we have to find out and identify what it is we're good at and how we can contribute, right? And so even though you may feel as though that your role is small, it's not really small because it all adds up. It all pushes us toward the goal and towards the mark of that high call to see to it that we shall all overcome in whatever that overcoming means for us.
And another thing is that we also have more people cover the media who offer our perspective.
Yes.
Versus during the 50s and 60s, we have people. You look at all the different medias, and you have representatives, and that's critical.
Yeah, and let's dissect that for a second because
Hmm.
the African American media outlets are very important. Not just black faces hosting media outlets that are owned by Caucasians or our white
Hmm.
counterparts, but black owned media is very important, right? Because you could be a black face or a black individual who works for a predominantly white owned institution media outlet, but you can't always say what you really feel or what the truth really is because you're always told to tone it down, to be mild and to be mindful of what you say because you don't own the platform or we don't own the platform. When I think about people, I think about people like Ida B. Wells, right? Frederick Douglass, people who Zora Neale Hurston, people who Langston Hughes, who were not afraid to write and to tell our truths and did not water down our experience to appease our white counterparts
Hmm.
because they did not care. Like they were not going to sanitize the black experience to make the white person or their white counterparts that they were working with to feel good because the reality is our experience is not always pleasant because our experience is filled with lynchings and beatings and rapes and murders and enslavement and critical race theory that we have to talk about and oppression and systemic racism and institutional racism because if we don't own our own stuff, then that means we're giving the narrative to somebody else to let them tell our story. And I feel like it's time out for that. I think that's the beauty in terms of 2021 and the time that we're living in now. Like you said, we do have more media outlets or possibilities to where uh, African Americans have more opportunities and have more ways to easily make sure that the narrative is told the way that it's supposed to be. And so even though, like, I think about people like Roland Martin, I think about people like yourself, me starting this podcast, and so this is an opportunity for us to have those conversations and to have those dialogues that need to be had. And so and this is very important, I think, because when I think about the civil rights movement, part of what they did was they were able to galvanize and to strategize and organize and mobilize. But in order for them to do that, they had to come behind closed doors and talks amongst themselves, hash out their differences, hash out the things that they probably disagreed with or what have you. And so when they went on the front lines, they had already dealt with that stuff behind closed doors or amongst themselves. When they went on the front lines, they were a united force, and they weren't bickering and arguing. And that's, in my opinion, that's how we got as much as we did done, like the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, because we gave ourselves those opportunities. And I think if we do that more now, we can get so much more accomplished. Because I think too often we we get in front of white supremacy and we argue and disagree in front of the powers that be.
There is a. I would go back to Martin Luther King when they planned the Montgomery boycott. Is that particular book was used in when I was in the seminary as a leadership uh,
You talking about
class.
strive toward freedom?
Was the best. It's the best. Yes,
Okay, yeah,
leadership
yeah.
book you can ever read, but we don't have it in our schools. We do not have that and the book that he wrote, and from step one all the way through how they did it, how they worked together, what they did, how they publish it. Everything there. Look, every person or group had some very important things to do, and I told so many people, and for as leadership is concerned, that is probably one of the best books I've ever read.
Yeah, I started reading Stride Toward Freedom. That was the very first work of MLK that I started. I never got a chance to finish it. I still have it, the same book over 10 years I've had it, and it was just crazy just to read his own work, his own words in a book, and to read the experiences or what have you. And so slowly but surely, though, you have some universities and some seminaries who are creating classes specifically about the theology of Dr. Martin Luther King. So even though it's not on a massive scale, you have some universities who have classes, electives, where they talk about the ideologies and theologies and philosophies of people like MLK, Malcolm X, or things that individuals of that nature. And so I think that's very important. You know, our media outlets, our own newspapers, and our own
Mm-hmm.
writings. And you talked about the Montgomery bus boycott. I think
Mm-hmm.
about this as well. The Montgomery bus boycott. They were able to stay off of the buses in Montgomery for a year and some change by just handing out a piece of paper that said, "Do not ride the buses in Montgomery."
Right.
And African Americans complied with that and did not ride the buses. They did not have social media. They did not have Facebook, Twitter. Nobody was sending out a tweet. Nobody had a YouTube page, and nobody had a Facebook, MySpace, whatever. Nobody had social media. Nobody even had a cell phone. Can you, for my millennials, can y'all really stop and process that? Like back in the 50s and 60s,
Yeah.
they did not have cell phones. If somebody wanted to reach you, you had to go home and check your voicemail, if they even had voicemail back then, right? And so you had to see who called you or what have you. And so life without a cell phone, all they had was a piece of paper, and they were passing them out. Here it is in 2021. We have social media. We have videos at our fingertips. We have the possibility to get correspondence
Mm-hmm.
at our fingertips. And I feel like today we struggle. We
Mm-hmm.
struggle. Like sometimes my generation, they bash the civil rights era of the 50s and 60s, and they love to say, well, we tired of marching, we tired of doing all this stuff, we tired of being nonviolent. Yet they had so much less than what we have today, and they were so successful.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think about why do we, and I want to ask you this, why is it that we have all of these social media outlets, but we still struggle getting things done sometimes? That's my question.
I and that's a long. How do we have social media? We have everything. We have three and four phones. We have three and four numbers,
Yeah.
telephone numbers. Um, how do we struggle? Why do we struggle to get things done? I think an intergenerational perspective, it's just so many things going on, so many things happening, and I'm going to go back to education again.
Mm-hmm.
From that standpoint, we talk about our history. We really get excited on in still February,
Mm-hmm.
February. But are we really teaching? Are we really teaching Black history?
Mm.
I think we can do better. We can do better. We really can do better. We have all the devices here, but sometimes when you don't know the struggle, we know civil rights has not ended. That's my statement. So we know that at my age, how do I get that information to your generation, the millennials? How do I get that information even to Gen X sometime? And
Mm-hmm.
they have children. I
Mm.
think
Yeah.
to me that is the weakness of our people, is that we don't want to. Sometimes we don't want to deal with truth. We hide from truth. We say no, this can't be happening. We
In
because
denial.
we had opportunity to have the devices, we have opportunity to get jobs, we have opportunity to be educated. But how often we tell our children, the younger people, that you ever thought about the 1890 schools, how they came about?
Mm.
You know, the 1890 school, agricultural, technical, mechanical schools, because we couldn't go to land grant university, like Penn State, agricultural schools. Or do we ever sit down and tell our children now, we sit at the table and eat, but what about the farm workers? The
Yeah.
farm workers who getting up every morning at 100-degree temperature, and we don't have food on the table. If we don't have farm workers, we don't have food. It's so much happening, but we become too relaxed in everyday life, until we taking it for granted, until something hit us so fast, and then we panic. So that, I think, from that standpoint, just looking at my age and looking at some of the young people, I fought us as well as older people.
Mm.
Stop complaining because you're getting old. The point is that you need to start educating and communicating with young people. I mean, that's how we met. We started talking about what you're doing in your life and your friends and what I'm doing, and we came together. But
Mm.
not to older people should not down young people, and young people need an opportunity sometimes to listen to older people, and we communicate with one another.
And so,
Martin Luther
yeah.
King said, well, I'm going back to what
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Martin Luther King, when they went to the meeting, and he said that this is it. Now we're gonna do it, or we're not gonna do it.
Yeah.
And they committed themselves that particular night. That next, because the bus during the morning, that the buses were, they were not going to ride the buses. He sat in his kitchen, and there was a window, and right there the bus would pass by. He did what great leaders do. He didn't leave it there. Great leaders always go back and check and see what's going to happen. And he sat there, and when that bus driver came by, and it was only the bus driver was on that bus,
Yeah.
he thanked God for, well, we doing it. We're doing it. But we have leaders, you give you an assignment, you never go back and talk to the person.
No follow up.
No follow up.
No checking in how you
A great
doing.
leader is always
Is
doing follow up.
Yeah.
They check to see,
Is it working?
is it
What?
working?
How can we improve? Is there something that we need to change?
Right,
Is there something that we need to implement? Is there something that we need to take away?
right.
Is there something that we need to just stop doing altogether because it doesn't make sense, because it doesn't make sense as the person that's out here doing the groundwork, or what have you. Great leaders are always involved. Great leaders don't just give out directives, but they find themselves on the front lines doing the same things that they are telling you to do. It's like the same as saying, I will never tell you to do something that I won't do myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I think about that, I think about leaders like that. I'm grateful because they set the tone, they set the example, and you also said something. It makes me want to talk about. Sometimes there's this disconnect between the older generation and my generation, because you talked about it a little bit, of how sometimes the older generation will down the younger generation, and then the younger generation doesn't like to listen, and so. Have you seen improvement? Do you see more of the gelling between the two generations, or and how can we improve that? Like, what are some things that we can improve, because we have a lot of work to do, and the only way we're going to be able to accomplish anything is if we come together, is if the young person listens to the seasoned person, and if the seasoned person says, I can't run like I used to, but I can show you and tell you how to run. And so how can we kind of mend that 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 gap?
I have to. I know we don't have that much time, but just like 2 seconds, I was getting gas one day,
Yeah.
and this young person came up. Two young people, and will you please move your car back so I can get to the tank? I said, I moved back as far as I can move. No, move back. I said, I'm not moving back. And and she said, that's why young people don't like old people today. That was like, oh well. And so my husband said, oh no, you do not argue at a gas station, but knowing my personality, and I'm like, okay, I'm not moving. And you can call me old as you want to, but I'm
Oh
not
my
gonna do it.
goodness.
And so that's kind of like it wasn't a joke, a very serious story, but I think what it is that I personally I don't have a problem communicating with young people. I don't have a problem communicating with people my age. I maybe as a gerontologist, I understand the aging process, and so I follow that on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
I try very hard not to tell people what to do, but to listen to ideas from the young people, because I'm social media, but not like you. You have ideas. I want to hear about your ideas. I want you to tell me everything. If you're talking about an Asian process, I want to hear what you think about your grandma. Tell me about your grandma. Tell me about your mom and dad. But talk about your grandparents if you have an opportunity. So I learn a lot from young people. And I do not let that opportunity pass me, because y'all know a lot. And we can become, so I think, maybe, I would say brainwash. I would look at hair for it, and that's all the women
Mm-hmm.
with the hair today. When I was back doing it in the '70s, when we were doing the fro, right?
Yeah.
So I wear my fro a lot. I just brush it back today, but I wear my fro. And what I like about the young people doing today, they're not really wearing the big fro that we wore back in the,
Uh,
during the chef days.
yeah.
But what they're doing, they're wearing natural hair,
Mm-hmm.
and they went all different styles. And every time I see that, I'm like, this is really something, because someone told me years ago, when you look at the style of hair for us, it tells you where we are, in a sense. I mean, I haven't read that, so it tells you where we are. So I see all the young people with the braids. I see young people with the twists. I see young people with locks. I see young people with just natural hair.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's I like that, but also go and talk to them. How do you feel? How do you feel? What's happening with you? Even in churches, you get conversation with them. You have lunch with young people. What's on your mind? What can we do to help? What can you
Right.
help me with?
Right.
So I think it's the communication going on. I look at when older people criticize young people. This is what I say: why are you criticizing? Are you busy right now in your life, or are you thinking about the things you did when you were very young and you can't do all of those things now? Is there some type of resentment that you're carrying, but you're not aware of it?
You
And
know.
so that's how I go back and forth with the young people. I mean, millennials or Gen S, say, listen, what's happening right
Mm-hmm.
now? How can I help you? But how can you help me also? I call young people on the phone, or text them and say, can you help me? I'm doing a
Yes,
project.
you
Can you
do.
help me with this?
Yes, you do.
I
Yes, you do. I am living proof. Yes, you do.
so that's what I'm thinking of.
You know, I think. Do you think? the reason why sometimes older people give young people a hard time in that way that you just said, do you think it's because when they look at them, they sometimes see themselves at that age, and they might struggle because when they think about themselves in that age doing some of the same things, it kind of grinds their gears and just like it's like a major turnoff. It kind of disgusts them to where they can't even function to have a decent conversation because they see themselves back in the day or back when they were young in their age. Do you think that could be the
And
case?
that goes back to the aging process. How are
Mm-hmm.
you accepting this? How what's going on as you age? And accept the fact that we're aging, which was a blessing. Could be. I'm not, a psychologist, but from a gerontological perspective, I can see some people wrestle with the aging process.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want to accept the fact that he or she is getting older. And but I'm like, you have energy, young person. Hey, maybe you can help me with this particular project because your energy is a little bit better than mine now. Come on and help me. And I think that the only thing that I wrestle with, because I have granddaughters and they were like young, um, they have some of them have their own mindset
Mm-hmm.
and they know what they want to do and how they want to do it. And here you trying to tell them because you passed that role already is that going back to civil rights is that listen, it's perhaps to look different to you now because of social media and you see everything, but you didn't see the man that was hung on the tree. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't see that. You seen someone begging for life. You didn't see the person who was turned back because he or she did not get along. You're looking at something now with saying, you don't make enough money. Your credit is not right.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't see the time when those children march into those elementary school and doing certain integrating schools. You see now that perhaps you can enter into a university, but what happened within that university?
Mm-hmm.
So it's still the same thing. And I think when you listen to young people, try to get them to communicate with you the things that are happening in their life every day, and they back and forth things, attack over and over and over again. And I think you sit there and say, okay, this attack happened today, that happened today. It's constantly every day. So you go back to the civil rights and say, this what happened. Now you're facing this. But at the end of the day, it's the same attack, just maybe dressed up a little bit more. And I think that's our responsibility to try
Yeah.
to educate our young people
Yeah.
because they're feeling it. And we
Yeah.
have to do better. We have to do better.
Yeah,
And that whole,
it may look different, like you said. It may look different. They may not be swinging black bodies from trees like strange fruit, but they're doing different things. Like the noose has been traded for billy clubs and police guns and badges, right? So it's the same thing. It just looks different. They may not be wearing Klan sheets anymore. Now they're wearing suits and ties, and now they're holding political offices now, and now they are holding benches with judges sitting there. Now they are sitting, and even back then, so a lot of them were police officers back then too. They were wearing sheets, right?
mm-hmm,
And so now they are some of our mayors, some of our governors, some of our legislators, some of our judges, some of our prosecutors. They are the people that you run across on a day to day basis, and so we have to understand it. And I think that if we had more conversations, particularly between the older generation and the younger generation, where us sometimes like some of us millennials, we just need to listen, and we need to be able to hear y'all saying like, hey, I know what you're going through. It might not be the same. They might not be slinging y'all on trees, like swinging us on trees like they did back in the day, but this is what they're doing, right? And so you may not have Jim Crow Senior, but you got Jim Crow Junior, and here's what he looks like, and here's what he's doing, because the Junior never is really always identical in their method to the madness like the senior is. And so we have to educate, like you said, we have to educate to tell our people what to look for. One thing about me personally, and this is just my personality, even as a child, I loved hanging around senior citizens. I loved to hear them talk. I love their rhetoric. I love sometimes even like I've had folk who are from the South, North Carolina, Warrenton, North Carolina, some people from Georgia, but they have the accents. I just love them. I love their wisdom. I love everything about them because you learn so much. And part of who I am is because I've learned how to just love on my elders and love on my my senior citizens who have always been in their 50s and 60s because they have so much to offer. And I think young people, we do a disservice when we push them to the side, when we don't say it, but with our body language and with our behaviors, we tell them your day is past. It's our time to shine. Well, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have a baton to have in the first place. And so, one thing that we don't talk about a lot in terms of passing the baton, it's not just enough to pass a baton, but once you pass a baton, I need to know what to do with it. And in order to know what to do with it, it's having those conversations. It's talking to our elders. It's respecting them. It's acknowledging them. It's acknowledging that we stand on their shoulders. It's acknowledging that while we have it a little easier, yet life is still hard, they have helped make this road a little easier to where back then they were just fighting for the right to vote. Now we have an opportunity to hold public offices to help change legislation. And I think that is the one thing, as my dad would say, that grinds my gears when I see people my age that don't want to vote, that don't want to participate, and take advantage of something so simple, the fundamentals
Mm-hmm.
of what it
Mm-hmm.
means, because that if you want change, that's, believe it or not, like it or not, that's how change happens in your
Mm-hmm.
respective state, your city, your county, whatever. Is you listen to your elders, and when they tell you to vote, get your high pass up and go to the ballot box and vote.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't take rocket scientists, because the reality is, and I rest my case with this one with anybody who would tell me, well, it's no need to vote, voting doesn't help or whatever. Well, if your vote don't matter, then why are they trying so hard to take it from you?
Mm-hmm.
Why are they trying so hard to suppress? I did a show with Brother James and Brother Trey a while ago about voter suppression. Why are they fighting so hard to make sure they can lock you up for helping your parent or your grandparent cast their ballot who can't even leave their house?
Mm-hmm. That is so true. And speaking from also from a gerontological perspective, is that
Yeah.
we are different. We as we age, we become different. A good example is also what I was going to say is that I get text messages all the time. You know how you all just text, right? So
We,
I tell people when I get to know them, I said, listen, I am so older. I deal with text. I am pretty good with with the devices. I'm pretty good, okay? But I
allow
said
me allow me to be your
sometimes
proof and your evidence and tell people, yes, you are, because
I
you are
am.
vicious with the text messages. You are.
I am very good. But the thing about it is that sometimes I just want to call on the phone because that old person comes back again. I want to just talk on the phone. I can cover so much in 5 minutes on the phone, and it took 10 text messages to deal with this. And I get to the point I just turn, I'm done. I'm like done. And so there is in the aging process, we age and things we change. Sometimes the eyesight is not better. It's better. Or you have designs in the churches, certain colors that we use versus when we was younger because of our eyes. Eyes are aging. So there's a lot of things that happen even when you thinking about building a church or building changing your colors of your classrooms in the church. There's just certain things that happen through the aging process, and a lot of people don't realize that. So, but I tell our elderly people, I said, listen, what happened to the dinosaur?
Yeah.
Now we can sit and complain,
Yeah.
but what happened to the dinosaur? So the dinosaur became extinct. So as long as God has blessed you and you can think and you can move your fingers and your brain is working, we need to learn about social media because that is the way it is, or you're going to get left behind.
Yeah.
I tell
And
my friends that.
yeah, and that's very true. That's very true because I think about it this way, right? when the pandemic hit, pre-COVID, you had a lot of churches. We ain't doing no social media. We ain't giving electronically. We ain't doing a lot of this, and they was stuck in that same mentality, right? And social media was of the devil and all this other kind of crazy stuff. And so when COVID hit, if you still wanted to be relevant, if you still wanted to exist and thrive as a church, you had to now, because couldn't nobody come to your services because the doors had to be closed because of CDC guideline, right? The only way you were able to still thrive and keep moving was your members had to now give electronically. Your members had to now tune in to face some kind of social media platform to watch the service and to engage. And now with COVID happening, people can join virtually, right? And so whenever they do open back up, if they haven't already, right, they're now on the membership, and now they've been on the membership for 15 months since the pandemic then started. Because and so now and then what ended up happening is churches who were not socially astute or what have you fell behind during COVID, whereas other folk who've been doing it the whole time, it was a no brainer. It was like, okay, well, all we doing is just putting everything, virtually now. It doesn't hurt us because we've been doing it all of this time. And so, how much time has wasted because you're trying to figure out how to thrive, right? And the same thing with the civil rights era. If we don't, if we're always scared to continue to evolve our methods and make sure that we're doing things, that we're going and growing and evolving with the times, then yes, we're always going to be a step behind, and we can't even focus on the fight at hand because we're trying to get our methods and our strategies together because we're so far behind. And so I think that there has to be some kind of conversation with the younger and the older generation too. Like the younger generation, what I feel like we need to do is we need to appreciate the fundamentals and the foundations of old and find ways to incorporate what we learn from our seniors, whether that be traditional habits or what have you. Like they always have a place in whatever it is you do, right? But also, what there needs to be on the flip side is our older people have to want to let go of tradition sometimes and want to grow and want to evolve, right? And so I think that's another barrier that we don't always talk about, I think.
And that is so true. We have to want to do that,
Yeah.
and to make things better. That's how I look at it. You can't just you can you have we have an opportunity to learn from our young people. We really do. Um and they have an opportunity to learn from us. So how do we do it? How do we bring this together? How do we uh create opportunities so that can happen? So that can happen.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like conversations like this, what we're doing now, is important because this is a prime example of what it means to have intergenerational conversations and close that gap to where we say, hey, let me just sit down with somebody that's older than me and get some of that knowledge.
Right.
Because sometimes all it takes is a conversation a lot of times. And like I was telling you earlier, I know we were talking about before we went live, exactly what did I tell you? I make my show so simple. It's a
Hmm.
conversation. The only difference is the people that are watching get a chance to eavesdrop on our conversation. And we
Hmm.
need to have more conversations like this at dinner tables, on phone calls, on buses, in our everyday lives is what I'm pretty
Hmm.
much trying to say. Whereas, hey, if and to my young people, when you find yourself out and about living your life, living your best life, whatever you want to call it, right? If you see somebody that's older than you, don't be afraid to pull them to the side and just to have a conversation to kind of pick their brain because they have so much to offer. And one of my things, Reverend Sue, that I tell people all the time, like I wish, and if he watching,
Hmm.
I want please somebody give me his contact information. I wish I could, find out how to talk to people like Andrew Young, Zanona Clayton, Brady, and people like that who we still have, who were a part of the civil rights
Mm-hmm.
movement. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk to Diane Nash. Like I want to talk to people
Mm-hmm.
that we still, while we still
Mm-hmm.
have them, so that I can pick their brains. Because there's so much I feel like there's questions that I have that the average documentarian
Mm-hmm.
hasn't asked yet. That I just want
Mm-hmm.
to find out, like, how can we do this or do that, or what was your mindset at my age when you were doing this kind of work? Because
Mm-hmm.
while we still have them, you know, they're not on the front lines because they're older, right? Even David in the Bible, David in the Bible, right? You know, he couldn't. He tried to go out there and fight, you know, but they had to tell him, "We can take it from here. You too old to fight. You too up there in age. You can't do it like you used to."
Right,
Right?
right.
And so you've taught us, you've trained us, you showed us. Let us take it from here. You tell us how to do it, and we'll go out there and do it while we still got you. You know, we will honor
Mm-hmm.
you. We will acknowledge you. We will reverence who you are and so much that you've done and so much that you've given to us as a people, as a leader, right? But we know you can't go out there and fight like you used to. And so, no, Diane Nash can't march like she used to. No, Andrew Young can't go out there and fight and go to court and fight injunctions like he used to. But we can. You know,
Right.
we have so many different resources. Just tell us how to strategically
Mm-hmm.
get this done. And I think that if there were more conversations, if there was more um, closing in those gaps to where we don't feel like strangers between the older generation and the younger generation. You know what I'm saying? And if we can close those gaps, then and only then can we continue to get some things done. Because I look at the civil rights movement, you know, like the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, that happened back to back. That one was 64, one was 65. And then when King died, you know, Johnson was like, well, let's get us, what was it? I think it was the
Right.
Fair Housing Act, you know, as a homage to King. We're like, we're gonna get this done. You follow what I'm saying? And so they've accomplished so much, and it's like we're clustering and fussing and at each other's throats all the time. Like
Mm-hmm.
that is one thing that I wish could change, and I wish we can do better. Reverend
I
Sue,
I
go
think that
ahead.
let's trade. That's what we're talking about. Let's trade knowledge, wisdom for
Yes.
energy, new ideas. Yeah. Let's
Reverend
trade.
Sue, if there's one thing that you could say to the older generation and the younger generation, what would you say?
I think I just
Final
said it.
final word, like a final,
Yeah.
whether it be a word or a phrase. Is it, if it's one thing that you can just say to them, what would it
I
be?
really think from the bottom of my heart, as a gerontologist, okay, fine word. Number first thing, we need more African American in the field of gerontology. We need more doctors in the field of geriatric medicine. And let's trade. Let's trade our knowledge. Let's trade our wisdom. And that's what I would leave. We have to trade now. That your energy, my energy, and new ideas and working together.
Reverend Sue Harris, there you have it. Can you believe we did an hour?
I believe it.
We did a whole hour. Listen, so tell us where we can find you. We know you have a radio show. Tell us people where they can find you. Whether it be social media, tell people where your radio show is, the station, so they know where to log in and to find you each and every week.
We're Sunday evening with Reverend Sue every Sunday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 on 1340 WYCB. However, you may go online and get myspiritdc.com.
And yeah,
Myspiritdc.com.
you
And
don't.
matter of fact, our guest for Sunday coming is Reverend Deontay Carroll.
Yes,
Great conversation. Please do not
yes.
miss it. Myspiritdc.com.
Yes, I'm going to be on this Sunday. Like I said earlier, I done lost track of how many times I done been on your show. But listen, I'm gonna have you back on. I'm gonna have you back on. I believe in recurring guests, as you can tell, and so what I'm going to do is, I'm pretty sure that they would be ecstatic, but I'm going to work it out to where I can get you, Trey, and James on at the same show, and we can all have an enlightening, phenomenal conversation on whatever subject, whatever's going on at the time, because I feel like that's long overdue. And I'm pretty sure when they see this, they're gonna lose their mind because I'm saying this. All right. And so, Reverend Sue, I thank you so much for coming on,
And
taking
thank you
time out
very
of your
much
busy
for having
schedule.
me.
This is the first time we've seen each other on video camera because we've always talked on the phone, we've texted.
Yes.
But do understand, I love you from the bottom of my heart. I love you so much. I love you dearly. I appreciate you. I acknowledge you. I value you because you have given so much, as so many others have. You have given and deposited so much in my life. And I'm so glad, like I said earlier, I have a platform to have you on because even though you're on radio, people can't see your face. I'm glad that people, even though I've promoted your show each and every time I've been on, people can put a face to the name when it comes to your show. And so I'm glad that I'm able to do that. Listen, y'all do me a favor, Reverend Sue, don't go nowhere. Let me close the show out, and we gonna talk briefly offline because I gotta go upstairs to my baby girl. Okay, so
Okay.
people, thank you so much, Reverend Sue. Listen, y'all do me a favor, follow me on social media, follow me on Twitter. I'm on Twitter at Deontay J Curl. Right there, you see it, my lower third. Go right now and follow me on Twitter, Deontay J Curl, no apostrophe. Also, do me a favor, follow me on Instagram at Deontay Curl, no apostrophe, no space. Also, follow me on Facebook at Deontay J Curl Senior. That it is right there, Deontay J Curl Senior. Each and every week I go live on Facebook, but also watch this. Follow me on YouTube at Deontay Curl one space. Follow me and look for my logo and subscribe to the channel. Click the bell after you subscribe and hit all to turn on all your notifications so that each and every time we go live, you will get a notification on each and every one of your devices. And also, listen, it takes money to run the show. We try to keep it look professional, give you guys something worth looking at. So if you want to be a blessing, feel free to drop something in the cash at DJ Curl 91. Also, if you want to be a blessing through Zelle, DeontayJCurl at gmail.com. There's a way you can do it. Also, shout out to, also, before we do that, go to my website, www.deontaycurl.com. You can find episodes from way back on the podcast. Is there information about who I am, my books that I have available. I'm thinking about doing some merchandise too, y'all. So, y'all go to the website, check it out. Also, July 20th is a special day in my life because it is the day that me and my wife celebrate our watch this 2 year anniversary. So happy early anniversary because next time I come on, my anniversary will have passed. So happy pre-anniversary to my beautiful wife, Lamika Carroll. We celebrate 2 years on July 20th. Happy anniversary, babe. I love you dearly. Thank you so much for being supportive. Thank you for being a rock. Thank you for being an encourager. Thank you for being all that you are. I love you dearly. You are a phenomenal black woman. I cannot wait to spend the rest of my life with you. And guess what? I love doing time, life, a life sentence with you. Y'all, do me a favor. I love you guys. Y'all be good. Be safe. Listen, I know everybody taking the mask off, but we still in the pandemic. We may be over with the pandemic, but the pandemic ain't over us. So y'all do me a favor. Stay tuned. And also, next week, July 22nd, I'm having best-selling author Michael C. Bender of the book Frankly We Did Win the Election, the inside story of how Trump lost. He is going to be here with us next week, next Thursday, July 22nd at 7 p.m. You do not want to miss this because this is going to be a phenomenal interview. His book is just going crazy, and I got a chance to talk to his people, and they are just as excited as I am. So listen, I love you guys. Be safe. There's so much going on. Don't be afraid to speak your mind. Whatever you do, whatever you got to say, do me a favor and say it with your chest. Until next time, y'all do me a favor and keep that volume turned up. Peace, be blessed, and I love y'all.
and you're watching. Turn up the volume. And turn up the volume. Turn up the volume. Turn up.